Everybody, thank you for joining the ACA Small Business Bootcamp and Resource Collective for this Friday special session on Friday, April 30th. We're excited to have everybody with us today. To get started, I'm Robert Theobald, the Small Business Ombudsman and Vice President of Small Business Services here at the Commerce Authority. As we like to do on these, we like to recognize all of our community partners. We've been doing these boot camps. This week marks the year anniversary that we started these, and we could not do the boot camp sessions. We could not have done this full year and the forward-thinking sessions without all of our community partners. So we're very grateful to their time, effort, support, and expertise for joining us. So those who aren't aware, the Small Business Bootcamp and Resource Collective is designed to help small businesses work through the COVID crisis. It is a statewide initiative supported by our community partners. And besides the boot camp, it is a resource collective and a content library. On our website, azcommerce.com/small-business-boot-camp, we have, this is the website you went to register for today's session. And on that website, you can find the upcoming sessions. You'll find the link to the resource collective, and then you'll find all of our previous sessions. As I mentioned, we've been doing this for over a year now, and we've recorded all of our sessions, all but 3, I think. And all that content is on the archive on that website, available to you at no cost to go back and review, share with others, etc., to help benefit your business. It makes a content library of over 140 different sessions that are available for review. Additionally, as I mentioned, we have the Resource Collective, and this is a page that has tools and guides and resources brought by our community partners to help support small businesses. And this is just a sample list of some of those guides that you'll find on the Resource Collective. And they, again, there's no cost, they're all available for you small business owners to access. Additionally, the Arizona Commerce Authority has our COVID-19 Arizona Business Resources website. And this website has business guidance, has financial resources, and many other things to help support businesses during COVID-19. Additionally, the ACA has a number of programs that can help support small businesses, our small business services. We have our workforce division, and then for manufacturers, we have our Arizona MEP, our Manufacturing Extension Partnership. Additionally, we have a small business checklist, and this is a great resource for helping understand the licensing, registration, and compliance needs at the local, state, and federal level as you're getting ready to start a new business or start a new business line or expand into other communities. And then the final website I want to mention is the state's Arizona state's COVID-19 resource page, arizonatogether.org. This is everything COVID-19 related. And it's a great website as well. So with that, we like to get into some updates. For many of you may know, the Shuttered Venue Operator Grant has reopened. If you're on this, you're looking for information on the Restaurant Revitalization Fund. Can't do both those programs, so we'll get more into the RRF here shortly. But for those that know venue operators, the SVOG has reopened. Additionally, the IRS has issued some information on some tax credits for paid leave related to COVID-19 and also related to the vaccine for COVID-19. So there's some great information on the IRS website for those tax credits. So with that, I want to take a quick look at next week's sessions. We've got today's RRF session that we're going to be talking about here shortly. Next week, we are focusing both sessions on how to start podcasting. If you thought about doing podcasts for your business to help it grow or to share your expertise, we've got a 2-part series on Tuesday and Thursday with Andre Jones is going to walk us through how to set up a podcast and then how to grow your podcast to help grow your business. So really excited about that session next week. So with that, I'm going to jump into today's sessions. We've got a number of different speakers today to talk about the Restaurant Revitalization Fund and the whole program. We have Brian Quijada from the SBA. We have Jim Pipper from the SBA, Dan Bogert from the Arizona Restaurant Association, and then Maeve Graham from Square. And I mentioned that because The SBA has partnered with a number of the different payment providers that a lot of the restaurants use to help make the system go easier. And so we wanted to get we have a great relationship with Square and want to bring them on to share how that can work on their end. So with that, we're going to start by turning the time over to Dan today and let him share a few things, and then we'll jump into the SBA and then over to Square. So with that, Dan, the time is yours.
Perfect. Thank you, Robert. Let me just pull this up here real quick.
While Dan's pulling that up, please post your questions that you may have in the Q&A. If we don't get to them, we will forward that information over to the SBA team and they'll get back with you on your questions. But yeah, please place those questions in the Q&A and we'll use the chat for other information that will be beneficial.
Thanks, Robert. I just want to, is my presentation coming through correctly?
Yep, looks good.
Okay, perfect. Well, good morning, everybody. Again, my name is Dan Bogert, and I'm the Chief Operating Officer here at the Arizona Restaurant Association. And thank you, Robert, for having us on here again. I will attempt to be as quick as possible so we can get on to the real experts to actually talk about the Restaurant Revitalization Fund. But I wanted to just cover a little bit of how we got here. So you're really going all the way back to March of 2020 when we first saw what type of impact was this virus was going to have on the restaurant industry. All of the state restaurant associations and the National Restaurant Association really started pushing for a restaurant-specific relief program. And the primary reason behind that is we were on one of a few industries who were basically flat out told by government that we were not able to operate in the same way as before. So we developed several ideas, and really that morphed into a proposal that we call the Blueprint for Restaurant Revival that was published in July of 2020. And that ultimately led to the Restaurants Act that was introduced in both the House and the Senate version being sponsored by Senator Sinema. And it's important to note that there were very few industries that got a industry-specific relief program. And how we got ours is the Restaurants Act started it all. It got the conversation going, and we were able to build up momentum moving into the Biden administration taking over in January. And once we had that bipartisan legislation introduced in Congress that was morphed into the relief bill that ultimately passed in January. And so that Restaurants Act framework was brought in and created the Restaurant Revitalization Fund. So we know that we've got the RRF registration launching today, applications next week. Our goal is to continue pushing for additional resources for the industry. We're anticipating that the funds in the RRF will be used up fairly quickly, and we will be going back to demonstrate the need through that quick use of the resources. So talking about RRF, just wanted to give you a brief overview of some resources that are available. None of these are behind membership walls. These are all open to any operator out there that wants to take a look at it. And Robert, all of these have links attached to them. I know you'll post this. Hopefully they work. If not, we can get you those links over separately. But the National Restaurant Association has done a really good job of staying on top of this. And I know that they've been working with the great team over at the SBA throughout this entire process. So a couple of items that are available for you is they published a step-by-step guide on how to go through the application process, along with an FAQ document. And as this process continues, that FAQ document will continue to be updated. If you as an operator are running into an issue where you're not entirely sure which way to go on it, feel free to always reach out directly to us. We're always happy to, if we know the answer, we're happy to communicate it to you. If we don't, we're happy to send it up to the chain and see if we can get a straight answer back on how to proceed. In addition, we had a webinar just a couple of days ago with the SBA administrator and the National Restaurant Association that talked about this. And for folks who are interested in some of the other programs as well, there's a good overview webinar, a recorded webinar that covers PPP second draw, the ERTC, and the RRF. All of this can be found at restaurantsact.com/RRF. That's a good kind of clearinghouse for resources and links to a lot of the great resources that the SBA has also put up in the last week or so. So Robert, that's all I have, but I'll stick around and see if we can answer any questions.
All right, sounds great. Jim, you're up. We're gonna let Jim get his presentation up there and get started.
Okay, good morning, everybody. Nice to see you and happy Friday. Glad that everyone that's on here is getting prepared. Today, the RRF is accepting applications, and so now's your opportunity to pay more attention to the details. That's I like to say the devil's in the details, and it's what we don't know that we don't know. And Dan just presented some really solid information. The PowerPoint that I'm using right now was just pipelined down to us. So you're the first to see this fresh PowerPoint. On the screen right now is what is it? The RRF. It's, as Dan mentioned, it became public law on March 11th and established the RRF. So it's $28.6 billion. And like Dan also mentioned, we anticipate that it will go quickly Monday when things open up. So the appropriations will remain available until expended. No time, no deadline. Fund must be used for eligible uses no later than March 11, 2023. That's an important date for everyone to remember. Next slide, please. All right, who is eligible? One of my favorite slides. Restaurants, food stands, food trucks, food carts, caterers, bars, salons, lounges, taverns, snack and non-alcoholic beverage bars like coffee shops, ice cream shops, one of my favorites, bakeries, another one. The next few that are eligible there's a caveat. They will have to have at least 33% of their gross receipts produced from on-site sales to the public. So bakeries fall into that category, brew pubs and microbreweries, wineries and distillers, inns, licensed facilities or premises of a beverage alcohol producer where the public may tasting rooms, sample or purchase products. Other similar places of business in which the public or patrons assemble for the primary purpose of being served food or drink. Next slide, please. Who is ineligible? State and local government operated businesses. As of March 13, 2020, someone owns or operates together with any affiliated business more than 20 locations, regardless of whether those locations do business under the same or different names or are in different industries. Has a pending application for or has received a shutter venue operators grant, is a publicly traded company, is permanently closed, is a nonprofit organization, and lastly, is not eligible for funding of at least $1,000. If they can't qualify for $1,000, that's the minimum. So next slide, please. As I just mentioned, minimum award $1,000. SBA may provide funding of up to $5 million per location, not to exceed $10 million total for the applicant and any affiliated businesses. Next slide, please. How is the program different from other SBA programs? Applicants do not need to be registered in SAM.gov, and SBA will not require a DUNS or CAGE identifier. That is probably foreign to some of the folks that are on this call, maybe not, but I'm going to reiterate it. Was required under the shutter venue, and it threw a lot of folks that weren't familiar with either SAM.gov or DUNS and CAGE identifier numbers, and it was confusing. So they took it out of this one. Valid unexpired ITINs are acceptable. And there's some information on TINs as well. So next slide, please. Who is eligible? Form of organization: C Corps, S Corps, partnerships, limited liability companies, sole proprietors, self-employed individuals, independent contractors, tribal businesses, LLC taxed as LLCs taxed as S corporations and or sole proprietors. So they kind of covered the gamut on this one. Next slide, please. Who is eligible under franchises? Here's a key important fact. Any business concern operating as a franchise and meeting all other program requirements is eligible. The franchise must be listed in the SBA franchise directory. That's an important point. Some franchises have not taken a step. Most of them have. Most of them have knew the value of getting on SBA's franchise registry, and they have. But just in case one is not on there, they must apply. So in the application portal, applicants will be able to look up their entity on the SBA franchise directory. So they're giving you a helping hand on it. Next slide, please. Okay, who is eligible under bankruptcy? Applicants that are operating under an approved plan of reorganization under either a Chapter 11, Chapter 12, or Chapter 13 bankruptcy and meet all program requirements are eligible for funding. An applicant is not eligible if it has permanently closed, filed a Chapter 7 liquidation bankruptcy, or has filed for either Chapter 7, 11, 12, and 13 bankruptcies, but is not under an approved plan of reorganization. So in other words, if they haven't been approved, they'll be ineligible at this point. Next slide. Who is eligible under affiliation rules? Okay, this is kind of an important slide. You must count all locations owned or operated under your applicant business's EIN and your applicant business's affiliates, even those that are not eligible for RRF. That's bolded, and so pay attention. Counting locations. Any entity that together with its affiliates owns or operates more than 20 locations, regardless of whether the businesses operate under different names or are different types of businesses, is not eligible for RRF. For example, if your business and its affiliates own 16 dry cleaners and 5 restaurants, your business has 21 locations, which means your business is not eligible for RRF. Each place where the applicant or affiliates conduct sales from a permanent structure is counted as a location. If the application or affiliates conduct sales from multiple permanent locations, each address is a separate location. For a caterer or a single business with multiple food stands, trucks, or carts, the physical location is where the business is headquartered, i.e. a business with 1 permanent structure and 5 food trucks would have 1 location. A caterer will have 1 location. Next slide, please. More on the affiliation. Corporate groups. Locations owned or operated by a single corporate group will count toward the 20 location maximum limit for eligibility and the $10 million aggregate limit on RRF funding. Businesses that are part of a single corporate group that in the aggregate own or operate more than 20 locations are not eligible for RRF funds. When individuals or entities directly or indirectly own or control multiple locations, all locations must be counted toward the 20 location maximum limit for eligibility and the $10 million aggregate limit in RRF funding. This includes any locations that operate under separate tax ID numbers or names, and applies whether or not ownership or control is through an individual, management, or holding companies or other entities. Lastly, for example, an individual owns or controls 16 restaurants, each with separate tax ID numbers, and 5 gas stations. Since all of these businesses, restaurants, and gas stations must be counted, none of the restaurants are eligible for RRF funds. Next slide, please. Who is eligible? when you are filing out your application, and today that application window is open, you will be asked if the applicant has affiliates. You must select yes if the RRF eligible applicant entity has an equity interest or right to profit distributions of 50% or greater of one or more other business entities, and/or you must select yes if any owner of 20% or greater equity interest of the RRF eligible applicant entity has an equity interest or right to profit distribution of 50% or greater of one or more other business entities. And lastly, you must select yes if the applicant business is a holding company or management company that owns or manages a business other than the applicant business, or if the applicant business is held or managed by a company that owns or manages other businesses. You must count these entities as separate affiliates and locations. Next slide, please. How do other SBA relief programs impact the RRF? Paycheck Protection Program loans. Any funds already received through the Paycheck Protection Program will be subtracted from the applicant's final funding amount. Applicant is verified using the EIN, ITIN, or Social Security number associated with its PPP loans. If the applicant received a PPP loan, the applicant must use the same EIN number for its RRF application as it used in its PPP application. If an applicant applied for a first draw PPP loan for multiple locations under one EIN and subsequently applied for second draw PPP loans under different EINs, the applicant must provide the EINs for each entities that received second draw PPP loans. Lastly, upon applying for RRF, applicant must withdraw any outstanding PPP application. Lastly, the applicant must not have a pending application for or have received a shuttered venue operator grant from SBA. Next slide, please. Other attestations, all applicants will be required to certify that current economic uncertainty makes the funding request necessary to support ongoing or anticipated operations. That's an attestation statement that all applicants will be required to certify. Next slide. One of my favorites. What are the eligible uses of funds? All right. I have to go over these quickly, but the slides will be available. So business expenses, business payroll costs, including sick leave, business utility payments, business maintenance expenses, business supplies, including protective equipment and cleaning materials, business food and beverage expenses, including raw materials, covered supplier costs, and lastly, business operating expenses such as insurance, marketing, fees, licenses, legal costs, POS equipment, etc. Under construction expenses, construction of outdoor seating is eligible. Expansion costs are not eligible. Business debt, payments on any business mortgage obligation, both principal and interest. Note, this does not include any prepayment or of principal or interest. And then lastly, business debt service, both principal and interest. And again, this does not include any prepayment or principal or interest. Next slide, please. When do I have to use the funds? The funds must be spent on expenses that were or are incurred between February 15, 2020 and March 11, 2023. If the business permanently closes after receiving funds, the covered period will end when the business permanently closes or March 11, 2023, whichever occurs sooner. Any funds not spent on eligible expenses by the time the covered period ends must be returned to the government. Next slide. When do I have to use the funds? Well, use of funds assessment after the total awarded funds have been exhausted entities must provide a detailed expenditure report and certification for the required period. Until applicant completes the use of funds assessment beginning December 2021, applicants are required to provide self-reported, unaudited data detailing use of distributed funds each year through 2023. And lastly, SBA will provide additional guidance that outlines the detailed reporting requirements and procedures in the coming weeks. That's for sure. Next slide, please. Okay, at this point, I'm running out of voice, and I'm going to turn it over to my friend Brian. So here's Brian. I told him I was going to do that.
Thank you, Jim. Good morning. I love the Johnny Carson nod there. Again, thank you all for joining us. It's an exciting time as the Restaurant Revitalization Fund is due to open. What I'm going to be covering, what I will begin covering, is the calculation portion of your application, and then some pending items to cover regarding the program itself. So the calculations are going to be determined based on when your operation began for your restaurant. There's a total of four calculations, if you will. The first one that's on the screen there is for applicants that were in operation prior to January 1st of 2019. Okay. This is a very simple calculation. You're just going to take your 2019 gross receipts minus your 2020 gross receipts and minus any PPP loan amounts. That total will bring you, would arrive at your award amount for the RRF. Next slide, please. Calculation 2. This is if the restaurant began operations or operated partially through 2019. So what you're going to do here for 2019 is take your average monthly gross receipts for the months you were in operation, and then you're going to multiply that by 12. Then you're going to deduct that from your 2020 gross receipts, and as well deduct any PPP loans. Granted, if this particular group right here that was partially open in 2019, you may choose to use calculation 2 as the one we just discussed, or 3, which I'm going to discuss momentarily. But just have you know, calculation 3 could require a longer processing time. Next slide, please. Okay, calculation 3. This is for restaurants or for businesses that began operations on or between January 1st of 2020 through March 10th of 2021, or those that have not yet opened but began to incur eligible expenses as of March 11th of 2021. Okay, let me repeat that. In operation between January 1st of 2020 through March 10th of 2021, or not yet open, but incurred expenses as of March 11th of this year. So to calculate your award amount, you're going to take the total amount spent on eligible expenses between February 15th, 2020 through March 11th, 2021. Folks, please take note of this range here. This is what's going to be known as the covered period. For those that took out a PPP, you're familiar with this term. This is the covered period for the Restaurant Revitalization Fund. So February 15th of 2020 through March 11th of 2021. So again, you're going to take those eligible expenses incurred during that time frame and deduct it from 2020 and 2021 gross receipts. 2021 is through March 11th. And then of course, continue to deduct any PPP loans you may have received. That you will arrive at the award amount under this particular group here. As I mentioned, this calculation will take a little bit extra time because they do need to validate gross receipts and so forth. Next slide, please. Okay. Calculation 4, it's not really a calculation, but just an additional step or option that you have available to you. So if your business operates multiple locations, you can use different calculations. Okay, and then what you're going to do, you're going to consolidate the two amounts and arrive at an award. The aggregate funding is limited to 5 million per location, and of course, and 10 million for in total. So an example under this scenario, how you would use calculation 4, if you will. So let's say that you have a restaurant that was opened in 2015, right? So that qualifies for calculation number 1. And then you have another restaurant that you opened in 2020. So you can use calculation number 1 for the original location opened in 2015. And then you can use calculation 3 for the second location that was opened in 2020. You consolidate the two amounts and arrive at your award amount. Granted, again, I will repeat, because you are using calculation 3 in this example, it would be prone to longer processing times, but it is an option that is available to you. Next slide, please. Okay. What can you exclude from your 2020 gross receipts? Okay, the following list is what you would need to omit from your receipts. Number 1, any amounts that you received for PPP, first or second draw loans, would be removed. Any SBA Section 1112 payments. This is part of the CARES Act when SBA made principal and interest payments on towards any SBA loans that you had, 7A, 504s, microloans, etc. If you received an economic injury disaster loan, an EIDL advance grant, or any other grant through the CARES Act, any grant provided by the state, local government, or Randolph-Shepard Act financial relief grants, all those would be omitted from your gross receipts. So please do not include those when submitting your application. Next step, please. Next slide, please. How do you apply? Okay, we have three methods of applying. But first, I would like for you to know these important dates. Today, you can register for you can register in the portal. We have provided a link to that in the chat to make it easy for you, but the link for that is restaurants.sba.gov. Come Monday, so you have all weekend to register. Come Monday morning at noon Eastern time, so 9 a.m. local time, you will be able to submit your application. In the meantime, we've provided these links in the chat. There is a link to the program guide for the RF program, and which provides more detailed information that you're going to find from this slide. And secondly, a sample application. Please use that application to practice, to put your calculations together, gather your documents and so forth, so that come Monday, you can submit this application right away. So again, how do you apply? Number 1, directly through the SBA platform at restaurants.sba.gov. First, you do need to register and then apply come Monday morning. Secondly, through a point of sale vendor. Now, SBA has partnered with several point of sale vendors to facilitate the application process. So currently, if you are a customer of Toast or Square, you can apply directly through their platforms, through the Toast or Square apps. Okay, they have embedded the SBA application into their software, and you can upload your point of sale reports directly from the Toast or Square application and submit it to SBA. If you are a customer of the POS provider Aloha or Clover, now you cannot apply directly through them, but they are providing you gross receipt sales reports to utilize to apply through the SBA portal. Okay, and if you are not a customer of Toast, Square, Aloha, or Clover, your POS provider should be able to still generate sales reports, gross sales reports that you can utilize to submit in your application. Finally, you can apply through the telephone. Again, I want you to note this telephone number on the screen here, because this is not just to apply. This is the dedicated customer service center for the Restaurant Revitalization Grant. This is open from 8 a.m. to 8 p.m. Eastern time, Monday through Friday, making it 5 a.m. to 5 p.m. local time. If you do happen to reach them after hours, you can leave a message and they are calling back. But if you do want to apply over the phone, essentially what's going to happen is they're going to send you a paper application that you're going to have notarized and put the full financial package together and mail back in. So This is definitely going to take much longer than any of the above mentioned processes. So highly encouraged to apply online, but a paper application is available and you would have to mail it. What we've been told is the average time to process these, they're striving to do it within 15 days, but this is those that are directly through the SBA platform, through the POS providers, and of course, those that are utilizing calculation 1 or 2. Next slide, please. Okay, what documents do you need to apply? Okay, the first two are going to be, regardless of what calculation, these are going to be required, and these are going to be available through the platform, whether it's through SBA or through Toast or Square. Number one is the application. SBA Form 3172. This is what's available as a sample for you folks to practice on. This will be digitally signed through DocuSign on the portal. Secondly, an IRS Form 4506T. This is to obtain the certified tax records that have been filed with the IRS to ensure that we can compare the tax records with the financial statements provided in your application. Then finally, you will have to provide some form of gross receipt documentation, primarily your business tax returns. You're going to have to include bank statements and perhaps, depending on which calculation, externally or internally prepared financial statements, point of sales reports, etc. Next slide, please. Okay, so if you're using calculation 1 or 2, this is what is going to be required. Again, the first two, the application and the IRS Form 4506T, that's going to be provided through the app, so you do not have to provide this yourself. 2019 gross receipts documentation, your tax returns. The most recent 3 months bank statements. That's for 2019. For 2020, you have to provide at least one of the following. The preferred method would be your filed federal tax returns. That's the gold standard. That's the best thing to provide. If you do not have that for any reason, your point of sale report. The accepted form, but it may delay review past 14 days, are externally or internally prepared financial statements, such as your P&L and balance sheet. The applicant will have to sign, date, and certify this for accuracy. Please note that if you are able to obtain a comfort letter from your CPA regarding your financials, your income statement and balance sheet, that may expedite the process in review. Okay, but that's only if you can get a comfort letter from your CPA. Next slide, please. If you're using calculation 3, again, the application and 4506T has already been embedded in the application. Again, you'll need to provide 3 months of bank statements, most recent. For 2020 and 2021 gross receipts verification, you need to provide at least one of the following for each year. The preferred method, again, your tax returns for 2020 filed or prepared but not yet filed. Or your 2020 point of sale reports. We understand that tax returns may not have been filed since there was an extension, but if you do have them, please provide that. That is going to be the best way to get this moving along for you. And for 2021, your point of sale reports. Again, accepted is the externally or internally prepared financial statements. Again, if you have a CPA comfort letter, that will speed up the process. But if not, it will take more than 14 days to review and process. Next, eligible expense documentation. So for those expenses that were incurred between February 15th of 2020 and March 11th of this year, you'll provide at least one of the following. The preferred method is a qualified third-party accountant, bookkeeper, or CPA comfort letter with the associated P&L statement and balance sheet. This again will provide the fastest SBA review. The accepted method, which will delay review past 14 days, again is an externally or internally prepared P&L and balance sheet that is signed and dated by the applicant, and or an all expense documentation, for example, like payroll documents, outdoor seating expenditures, invoices, etc., business debt, lender loan statements, things of that nature. Anything that applies, please utilize it. That is going to be under an eligible expense. Next slide, please. Okay, so for those businesses that are not presumed to have gross receipts of 33% or more, in on-site sales to the general public. So this is going to include your brew pubs, tasting rooms, tap rooms, breweries, wineries, distilleries, bakeries, and inns. You're going to have to provide just a little bit more documentation to confirm the minimum 33% gross receipts in 2019. That's the key, 2019, that were made to the general public. This may include like your tax and trade bureau forms from your state or local government, or internally created reports from your accounting software. Now, if any of these businesses were open in 2020, the applicant does have to demonstrate that the original business plan contemplated at least 33% of gross receipts for sales to the public on site. Next slide, please. Okay, how do you get help applying? The call center is going to be the #1 source for you. They are helping folks through submit, answer questions on the application. Again, it's very important if it's available to you, download that application, practice with it, contact the customer service center with any questions. Also, the portal, I did get a sneak peek at the portal, and it is going to have a walkthrough feature. So it can walk you through it and answer some general questions as you're going through the application portal. Please contact the local SBA office or our resource partners, such as the Small Business Development Center, SCORE, the Women's Business Center, and the Veterans or the Veterans Business Center. Help is available at the call center in 8 languages, and the SBA website has information in 17 additional languages. Next slide, please. Best practices. So I cannot stress enough the importance of submitting a full, complete financial application package. Prior to working for SBA, I was a lender for many years, and this is what can speed up or delay your application. So please provide complete documentation. Any incomplete applications will be rejected, and the review process will restart. You'll be placed at the end of the line once the complete documentation is provided. So what does this mean? For example, tax returns. Please submit the full federal tax return with all schedules. Doesn't matter how big it is, submit it all. Not just page 1 and 2, everything needs to be reviewed. Bank statements. Please provide all copies of your bank statements, all pages, even those pages that are intentionally left blank. Please provide them, because, again, that constitutes a complete bank statement, not partial. Those little things right there can help speed up the process in your application. Leverage your resources. It's not required, but if you have contacts with a CPA or an accounting or financial professional, reach out to them, have them review your application just to ensure everything looks good, or review your financials to ensure that everything looks fine before you submit your application. Application corrections. The SBA is not able to make corrections on behalf of the borrower or the applicant. So please, if you realize that you made an error in your application, contact the call center to make that request. Also, please be cognizant of your email, because contact from the reviewer with SBA is going to be directly through the portal. The portal will be providing email notifications when you have messages there. So if there's any additional information that's required and so forth, it's going to be communicated through the portal. So please keep an eye on that, just to ensure that you provide the necessary information back to the reviewer. And finally, applicants who still intend to apply for PPP, you are advised to either complete that application in advance of the application or withdraw it. So if you haven't received funding already, I mean, you have to make a business decision on which product you want to go with, but please just have that in mind, that you cannot have an outstanding PPP application when you apply for the Restaurant Revitalization Fund. Next slide, please. Okay, when can you apply? Well, as you can see, there's a pilot period. That was a pilot practice period. Some participants were randomly selected through PPP. No one was funded or anything through this point. It was just a good practice for the portal to work out the kinks in the portal to ensure that a more seamless process would be available. But come Monday, for the first 21 days, there is a priority period where SBA will accept applications from all eligible applicants. However, only applications, I'm sorry, from small businesses owned by women, veterans, and socially and economically disadvantaged applicants will be funded during this period. Again, application opened Monday. All can apply at this point. So please do not hesitate to apply because of the priority period. But only applications will be funded and reviewed during this time for those businesses owned by women, veterans, and again, socially and economically disadvantaged applicants. Day 22, all applications will be processed and funded after that point. Next slide, please. Okay, so what are the priority groups? So by definition, it's the small business concern is that is at least 51% owned, and the management and daily business operation of the applicant are controlled by one or more individuals who are women, veterans, and socially and economic disadvantage. Applicants will self-certify on the application that they meet the eligibility requirements. So just to give you an example here, if an applicant has 5 owners who each own 20% of the business, 2 owners are veterans, 1 owner is socially and economic disadvantage. SBA will consider this applicant to meet the requirement because at least 51% of the ownership in under the 3 criteria has been met for the priority group. Next slide, please. Okay, so here are the definitions for socially and economic disadvantage. Number 1, socially disadvantaged individuals are those who have been subjected to racial and ethnic prejudice or cultural bias because of their identity as a member of a group without regard to their individual qualities. So this includes folks that are African American, Hispanic Americans, Native Americans, which include Alaska Natives and Native Hawaiians, Asian Pacific Americans, or subcontinent Asian Americans. And lastly, the economic disadvantaged individuals are those socially disadvantaged whose ability to compete in free enterprise system has been impaired due to the diminished capital and credit opportunities as compared to others in the same business area who are not socially disadvantaged. Next slide, please. It is important to note that entity reorganization for purposes of qualification for the priority period will result in an automatic disqualification of the award. So please do not make changes last minute to apply for the priority period. You will be disqualified. Next slide, please. Lastly, so the set asides for funding, just so you know that the SBA can reallocate these funds at the discretion of the administrator, but currently $5 billion has been set aside for applicants with 2019 gross receipts not to exceed 500,000. $4 billion has been set aside for 2019 gross receipts between $500,001 to 1.5 million. And an additional 500 million set aside for those with gross receipts in 2019 not exceeding $50,000. Next slide, please. This concludes our portion of the presentation, but we are available for questions.
So before we jump into questions, we're going to have Maeve jump on and share a little bit about how Square is helping process it, so those with payment providers that you mentioned can understand a bit more about that process.
Wonderful. Thank you so much for having me. As Robert mentioned, my name is Maeve. I'm a product manager at Square, and I work specifically with restaurants and on our Square for Restaurants product. So over the past few weeks, the SBA and Square have been partnering to prepare for the Restaurant Revitalization Fund launch on May 3rd. On May 3rd, when the application portal opens through the SBA website, the applications will also be open through Square's dashboard if you are an eligible business. And we went through those eligible businesses earlier, but by applying through Square, we're going to be able to pre-fill a lot of this data for you based on what we know about you as a customer. So if we've known you for a while, you've been processing with Square since 2019, we're going to have data for 2019 and 2020, which we can pre-fill the application with. Additionally, if you received PPP loans through Square, we'll be able to pre-fill that information for you, as well as the business owner details. If we don't have things like third-party revenue, we'll give you an option to enter that in when you're reviewing your revenue throughout the application process. And if necessary, upload that supporting documentation through the SBA portal later. As part of this application process, you're able to verify the accuracy of your revenue and make sure that everything looks right. If at any point it doesn't, applying through the SBA is always an option as well. Square is able to support eligible businesses, including those business types that are reviewed, who have been using Square as a processor since 2019, regardless of what portion of 2019. So essentially, if we're looking at table 1 and table 2 folks, that's who we're going to be able to support. Whereas we would direct table 3 folks to apply through SBA so that they're able to upload any eligible expenses. If you decide to apply through SBA and not apply through Square, then we do have 1099-K forms available on your dashboard, as well as generalized sales summary reports. Our goal with this partnership is to make it easy to apply for this for you, to make it feel streamlined, and to take the stuff that we already know about you as a customer and provide that to the SBA to streamline this overall process. Again, the big dates for us: you don't need to register today on 4/30 with the SBA if you intend and are eligible to apply through Square. On Monday, May 3rd, our applications will open at the same time that SBA's do. And that is my very, very quick spiel, but I blew through it so we'd still have a little bit of time for questions.
All right, thank you, Maeve. So
Absolutely.
We will jump into the Q&A box. Some of these have already been answers. Got one that says, I've been closed since March 2020 and had to open a new business checking account in January 2021. Sandra asked this question. Sandra, I'm going to recommend that you work with a small business development center on your question. It gets a little technical for this session to jump right into that. So I would highly recommend, I posted in the chat a link to the SBDC's site, or you can reach out to Dan at the Arizona Restaurant Association for some technical assistance potentially. But yeah, your situation is a little more technical than we can spend the time on or have the time to spend on here for the big group. Let's see. So the question is, how is RRF funds distributed? First come, first serve after the minority, veterans, and women-owned businesses? And Brian, I think you just answered that.
Correct. After the priority period ends on the 21st day, then they will be processed as first come, first serve.
Okay. Another question is, will the construction of temporary outdoor seating be eligible for RRF? There are many restaurants who created temporary outdoor seating areas to comply with the restaurant occupancy rules established in the COVID-19 response.
That should be okay. So, because one of the things that we've come across with restaurant owners who have expanded outdoor seating is, they have a lot of the structures, if you will, are temporary for many. Like they have to get heaters, for example, that are not permanently affixed to that part of the restaurant. So that should be okay.
Okay. Are eligible expenses used in calculation 3 of the same? Are eligible expenses used in calculation 3 the same as eligible expenses for use of funds?
Yes.
Excellent. Question: what if you opened in 2020 but had construction costs related to preparation for the opening? Are those costs eligible?
I would probably need a little bit more information on that. We can take this offline or have the attendee contact me directly on this.
Okay.
Yeah.
Our accountant is trying to get our taxes filed by Monday, but if they don't file, will a draft of 2020 taxes work?
Yes, prepared but not yet filed are acceptable. But if they have additional supporting documents, by all means included as well.
Another question is, it is my understanding if our business has closed, we are not eligible for RRF. Is there any relief for businesses like ourselves to reopen?
Jim, are you aware of any other funding options for reopening?
No, unfortunately, I am not.
Okay, yeah, me either. Sorry.
Yeah. Unfortunately, I think the answer is no.
Okay. So what happens if the business does not have a point of sale system? They process sales by hand.
That's okay. We would utilize your tax returns or internally prepared financial statements for review.
Excellent. Will restaurants with more than 1.5 million in sales in 2019 be eligible?
Yes. Yeah, if the attendee is referring to the set aside, that's just the set asides that SBA has allocated, but no, those are just specific segments that they're allocating specific funds for.
So what, another question, what groups are included in social disadvantaged groups?
Jim, do you wanna help out here? I know what we have listed on there, but is there anything else we can expand on regarding this?
You know, for the time being, and I think for purposes of this webinar this morning, we have to run with the PowerPoint slides, but please feel free to send me that question, and I'll take it up to the appropriate folks and see if that's all inclusive, or if there are other groups that weren't noted in the power slide today. So
Okay.
anyhow, yeah, thank you. Good question.
Are there any size limits on attached documents being submitted?
Not to my knowledge, but we haven't been told. So unfortunately, do not know at this moment what if any size limits there are for uploads.
We have 3 locations. 2 are currently temporarily closed with plans to reopen. In our application, do we still use all 3 locations gross receipts consolidated, or use the one open location gross receipts?
No, if there are plans to reopen, if it's temporarily closed, you can use them. Right, Jim? Yeah, that was my understanding as well.
Okay, excellent. Is this money taxable? That's a good question.
Jim?
Yeah, you know, are you referring to state taxes?
State,
Robert,
federal?
Some states have been including it, and I think that's that I know of. Robert, you and I talked about this yesterday, and I know Arizona is not one of them. Best I can tell, but again, that's a very good question, and I can say here I don't think Arizona is included in that, but there are approximately, what I read was 19 other states that are taxing even the forgiveness portion of PPP.
You'll definitely want to get with your tax professional on that. It wouldn't be in the taxes you're filing right now. And if it was, it'd be in next year's, but definitely want to
Right.
get the tax professional and review that question.
Yeah, thank you, Robert. That's perfect. They're gonna, consult your tax consultants.
Excellent. Well, that concludes our time. I know Dan has to jump off to another call, so thank you, Dan, for being with us. Maeve, could you post your contact information, if that's okay, in the chat? And we had a couple of
Sure
people
thing.
ask about that. So if you're looking for Maeve's contact information, she will put that in the chat, and we'll leave the chat open here for a bit. But we want to thank Jim and Brian for their presentation, Maeve, for your time. And this is an important topic. This is being recorded, so we will post the recording on our website along with those presentations that were shared. And we have links to all those different programs and the guides available on our website that's dedicated to the Restaurant Revitalization Fund. But again, we thank everybody for being here. One of the takeaways I'd say is there are people that want to help you get this process that are no cost. So you can contact the SBA, Small Business Development Centers, the SBDC, SCORE, and other no-cost providers. If you have questions about those, you feel free to contact us here at the ACA, and we can guide you to those resources. But we all want to help you get be able to take advantage of this grant opportunity. So we appreciate everybody being here with us. Thank you very much. Everybody have a great weekend. And we hope to see you on Tuesday for our podcasting session. So
Ready, set, go. Everybody,
Yes.
ready, set, go.
thank you all for being here.